I don't know what happened, but my video background is broken and I can't seem to turn it back on. And so now you could literally see my green screen. This is not how it's supposed to work.
It's okay. You look good with green behind you, Javier.
Yeah, I wish it was red though. That's my color, you know.
I did run into that before. If you have two Zoom meetings open, it probably check
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I just jumped from another one to this one. I would assume that the other one would be closed and this one opened, but apparently that's not how it works. So, oh well, it's okay. Post-production, I'm gonna add something to my background. Don't worry. All right, as a reminder, there is a doc associated to this meeting. If you could go ahead and add your name, creating the list real quick. 16th already. We have a future topic for automate creation of LCOW runner. Is that something for today's meeting?
Yep, that's right.
All right, let's do it. Okay. I went ahead and added that to the agenda. Okay, let's get started with status updates. I'll kick us off. From my perspective, been working a lot on the buildpacks.io website. Some changes that are relevant to this meeting. Our pack is now a top level tool that's called out for documentation. So if you go to buildpacks.io, you go to the doc section, there's a tools section now that has pack listed on there. And so our hope is to bring more focus to pack as a tool and not pack as the only thing that you could use within Cloud Native Buildpacks. And so what we're going to be doing is under those tools, we're going to, at the very minimum, call out additional tools or integrations that we have, such as the lifecycle, the pack orb, Tecton. But then at the same time, we are considering on adding external tools such as Kpack and others. So keep a lookout for that, but that is something that is happening right now. Any other status updates?
I was going to mention that we had a long-running PR open that had been kind of stalled because we were unable to get some of the tests that we added to pass on the GitHub Actions runner. That's been fixed, but it did require some production code changes. But we'll open up the PR, or I'll bump the PR again. But that's almost in a ready-to-review state.
When you say production code changes, is that at what level are we talking about? Is it pack, the runner?
The pack in the pack internal command or pack internal container run file. It's container run now doesn't do Docker log or container logs, and instead does container attach and then starts. But that's the one sentence version of it. I can
Yeah.
dive in.
Cool. Any other status updates? All right, looking for any movement. Doesn't seem like it. Let's move on. Sorry. Uh-oh, someone moved.
I was gonna say I was trying to find the Zoom thing, which totally disappeared in my computer. But I was spent this week working on an RFC4 builders, trying to define exactly what is present on builders and diving into some of the differences between Heroku and Paquito. And I didn't really look at rules, but there's as well. And that is up. Feel free to check that out.
Cool, great. All right, last call for status updates. Okay, moving on to release planning. I think at this point, we're still not quite at a reasonable spot to discuss what the release looks like for pack 014.0. There are a couple items that we probably could add to the agenda to discuss that we skipped over from last week. I think, David, some of those pertain to you. So I'll add those to the agenda and we could discuss them at longer length after we talk about the LCOW GA runner. I believe, Anthony, do you want to kick us off on that conversation?
Yeah. So in an earlier sub-team sync a couple weeks ago, right, I think we had expressed interest in sort of automating the provisioning process of these runners, just because when they, do eventually flake out or whatnot, we just would like to easily recreate it. And I put up a PR that attempts to do that as much as possible. Basically, it uses Terraform under the hood to talk the packet and do all the steps that are documented. There's a couple things. You still have to start Docker up by yourself, and there's the manual steps I think are still manual, but everything else is sort of just encapsulated there. And you might have to find a way to keep secrets out of the open source Git repo and whatnot. But
interesting. So if we, just out of curiosity, I haven't looked at this at length. Two questions that come up. So we're talking about some manual steps. My hope and assumption is that these manual steps at some point could also be automated through iteration, or is there a hard limitation as to what can be done through Terraform that would prevent that from happening?
Good question. So I believe there were already some manual steps around like starting pack up. I never was able to see that, but I believe Natalie said that. So I would lean on you all for however the pack process is started up. But for initiating Docker specifically, that has to be manual, at least from what I could see. That just not installing it, just turning it on the first time and setting up the shared drives maybe. That those literally the only two steps, and it was already manual in the docs before, right? So
right. Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure if we wanted to, we could do additional research to see whether or not we could hack around it. I know Micah's infamous for hacking around some of this stuff.
I was almost going to say a really bad idea, which is you can automate the GUI to potentially click buttons for you. But anyways.
Hey, I've done that before too, right? Like acceptance testing of GUIs. That's how you do it. So what's the difference here? That's awesome. That's really cool to see. So appreciate it.
As far as the Terraform stuff too, do you feel like, and And if folks in general feel like that packet might be a valid way to spin up non-CI VMs, potentially have the shared Windows VMs that all contributors, or not all contributors, but all core contributors could use? Or do we prefer to use like generic IaaSes for that?
I see what you're saying. Whether packet, yeah, that's a really good question. I know right now, as far as the CNCF is concerned, we are using packet solely for CI. I don't know if there would be any sort of considerations there that we'd have to let them know that we're also using it for active development. I wouldn't think so, given that we already have at least a Google Cloud account, a GCP account that we can use for development as well. So I don't know, but it's probably something worth bringing up to the CNCF.
Okay.
I do that.
Yeah, I think like it feels like the reproducibility of the CI failures in general would be a nice to have feature. But if we only have one set of CI jobs running on the packet, then maybe we want a more generic solution or something. But I feel like if we like that Terraform workflow, though, it might be worth making the process first, standing up the one-off Windows machines, also use Terraform. Maybe I'm merging the two ideas too soon, but I don't know what y'all think.
Yeah, I mean, I think now that we have some automation, which I believe I didn't see a lot of documentation as how to execute the Terraform scripts, but maybe that's something worth adding.
Yeah, I was thinking that belonged in the wiki, which sort of I don't know, you can't put in PR, but yeah, it's literally just a wrapper script called Terraform W.
I see.
And you know, if you're familiar with Terraform, it just sort of funnels all the commands down, but does the prep for you. So, but that's I'll put it to docs in somewhere somehow.
Yeah, I might add that to the PR just to add a README or something. But cool, appreciate it. And yeah, so once we have that automation, I think we could obviously expand on it and do a lot more with it. So I think it should be able to fit a lot of needs there.
Sweet.
Do you think that same template, sorry if this was already covered, but like it says LCOW, but it could easily be WCOW, right? All we need to do is just flip the setting on the Docker desktop, right, to be WCOW. So I don't know if that changes anything, but maybe it's worth calling out.
Yep, completely right. I just think we're still in a state where we're not sure whether we still want to keep going with these WCOW as opposed to default runners. So maybe it's too early for that, but yes, it could easily be WCOW.
You know what?
Yeah.
I'm gonna add that to the agenda because I was curious about our findings on the WCOW GitHub solution, being able to push it back there. Did we get anywhere with that?
Yeah, we good to dive into it now.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to update that. Yeah, so it appears that should work. We have an upcoming story that's going to actually do the work with the latest work that's on main and make sure that the workaround that or the state in which we could run everything on the vanilla worker. Sorry, let me restate my sentence. We did at one point get main to run on a vanilla WCOW worker. All worked fine. We've subsequently added some more test coverage for Windows stuff, unskipped a few tests, and those tests were failing again. We have a little bit of work to make those skip tests pass again, but I haven't seen any clear sign that a vanilla WCOW worker will not work. I think it's very likely that we should be able to use for WCOW a vanilla worker. So that would leave our last remaining self-hosted machine as the LCOW. But I feel like there's pros and cons to having the self-hosted WCOW, and a lot of the cons have sort of gone away with a very scriptable, easy to use, reproducible self-hosted runner. But I think there's still maybe enough debate to be had on either side on which one we would keep. But The nice bit is to switch back and forth to one to the other is really a low effort with all the automation work that Anthony put in, and potentially with, once it's working on a vanilla runner, it's unlikely to stop working again. So I feel like we don't necessarily have to make the choice right now, but it seems, just to answer your question, it does seem like it will run on the vanilla runners.
So it is an option that we could leverage if we choose to. And yeah, speaking to why we might want to, I believe the WCOW recently gave us some issues. I don't know exactly what the fix was. I believe, was it Dan took a look at that, kicked it maybe, and it just worked. So we've had to kick it a couple more times than we'd like. So I'd hate to, via cron job, have to restart it every night as a solution. So if someone else could take that off of our hands, that'd be awesome. Yeah,
and my understanding, it was a surprise to me too, the vanilla runners completely tear down the whole VM and then recreate one from scratch. So there's not even an option to restart a vanilla runner, even if you wanted to.
Perfect. All right, cool.
So that's queued up next in our backlog. We'll probably even start on it today, looking at the vanilla runners.
Nice. Okay, any other conversation about WCOWs? Is that an inappropriate term? I feel like that is the accurate term, WCOW. Don't laugh, Micah.
It just has good puns, like till the WCOWs come home, or I don't know, dad jokes galore. Sorry.
All right, let's move on. We have, I believe, 10 minutes. We could cover some of the items that require discussion on PAC 14.0. I went ahead and add that to the agenda, so you can click on that link. Now, if we look at just specifically the discussion needed items, there is the first one up top, 207. Yeah, I think it's probably better if I just share my screen. So 207 talks about adjusting the container limits on a build container. David, I believe you had some further insight from the Paketo team that may be worth having a conversation around.
I wouldn't quite say I had so much input. I had spent a bit of time in the Paketo Slack, and I saw that someone requested being able to adjust container limits and was a bit confused by what containers like sizes they got was. So yeah,
do you recall, sorry, I can't open it right now, but do you recall like what limits specifically we're looking at and what the potential solution for this would be? Like how much research have we put into this, and how much discussion do we need to have in order to make this something that's actionable?
I mean, definitely not so much research. I think that I believe it's a flag we can pass into. Well, I guess the difficulty is we don't quite know. We don't deal necessarily with the Docker daemon directly, so it's a bit hard to do.
Should we then maybe, instead of moving this into like an actual enhancement, do like some research into it, and then have this research yield some sort of, at least a plan on possible options for a solution?
Makes sense.
Yeah, I'm gonna do this now. I'm gonna put that there. Okay, we could go to the next one. So this is 285, only output full image tag or image digest from build. if I remember correctly, there's an open PR for this. David, is that right?
Yeah, there's an open PR.
Okay. So I'm assuming we're going through with this change.
I at the very least wanted to give a, I wanted to give a complete build for people to actually check it out. But as it was, quiet mode was not kind of fulfilling its mission. It was randomly having the logs from the fetcher appear. So this, at the very least, takes that out for quiet mode, and then it's just adding in what the app name and SHA is. So if that's useful, great. If not, at the very least, we should make sure our quiet mode is fully quiet.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I personally like what came out of this, so I think that seems reasonable to me. We could move this over, remove this tag, and that
I can
should
put
be
it in progress.
I have issues with the in progress status, but we could take those on later.
Because we always forget to add them.
Out after they're not in progress, so I feel like that's a lying state. Let's see what's next. Should log lifecycle arguments. Okay, so this one, I believe we had Jose. Uh-oh, I guess that doesn't work anymore.
It was to master, not main.
Oh.
I think there was a PR for it at some point.
And I believe we gave them some conflicting information about what we actually wanted to see in regards to the environment variables here. And so the discussion, this was quite a while ago. So it had to do with, we wanted to know how a certain life cycle phase was executed. And environment variables was part of that conversation, right? So what was the binary executed, what was the argument, and what were the environment variables? And then the complexity came to be when we talk about environment variables. There are environment variables that are being passed into the container itself that might have to do with authentication and whatnot. And then there is another set of environment variables that is being passed onto the disk, right? So I don't know where we want to take this, but if we want to, like, I guess I could see this going both ways. One of them being the iterative approach where we just ignore the environment variables, at least provide the binary and the arguments that are being passed in. I think that would still add a lot of value. And then add the complexity of environment variables after the fact where we display that. And then in that particular issue, we do kind of aggregate both the container and the file-based environment variables. Any issues with that? Questions, comments, concerns? Cool. So I'm gonna add that here. Honestly, just so you guys don't see me typing the whole time, I'm just gonna leave this open and I'll circle back around with a more properly formatted comment afterwards. Let's see. Uh-oh. What happened? Okay, I think the only other one that we have is digital signature support. Last we heard from this.
We haven't really heard much since the initial request, but it's something that people seem to at least want. There's an open issue in docs to document at least how you can do that with Notary V1 right now.
Mm-hmm.
But no work has been done on that.
So we have the docs issue. I wonder if it's worth punting this at least out of this version and yeah, not making it something that we kind of anticipate happening, especially if we don't have enough feedback yet. Cool. Let's try 15 and see if we get something at that point in time.
I mean,
I would satisfied at that point, right?
Yeah, I would like not have it in a milestone, just because like it's not necessarily something we're planning on working on. What we're essentially doing is we're totally punting on it at the moment, unless there's some feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do that. We'll see if we get more insight back on that. Cool. I believe that was it for discussion needed. Cool. I'll resolve this last one and we should be good. Uh-oh. All right. Anything else? Awesome. So with 2 minutes left, sorry.
Oh,
Someone-
sorry. Do we want to talk about the changes to container run I mentioned earlier? I'm happy to skip it unless someone's interested.
Container run image. Yeah.
Micah just responded to the issue. I think he had some comments on adjusting container limits.
Oh, this is also slightly tangentially related, but sorry. If anyone wants to bail, that's fine. So we stumbled on a bug in Windows where our current implementation for starting build containers was to call container start through the Docker API and then call container logs immediately after that. But there's a tiny little window of time in between there that didn't seem to matter for Linux, but did matter for Windows. So you'd actually lose some logs, tests would fail, etc. We tried a whole bunch of different approaches to try and make it work. What we ended up doing is looking a lot at the Docker CLI implementation, and they actually, like, so for a command like Docker run, it doesn't do that. It doesn't do the start and then logs necessarily. It instead does a Docker attach, followed by a Docker run, and then streams out the handles to standard in, standard out directly to the console, or through the whatever machinations it has to do that. So you can see in the PR once we finally get it open again, but we're proposing to change that for all OSs. It does seem to have a slight speed improvement for Linux. We got to confirm whether that is actually anything significant. But I'm just kind of wondering if anyone has any big red flags with potentially doing that, or maybe has context on why the current implementation was chosen over what was happening in the Docker CLI.
Definitely no concerns. I think it sounds like a net positive. I'm assuming from your testing, there are no gotchas to that implementation or anything that you found negative yet.
Nothing that we ran into. I do kind of want to do a little more poking to see, like, not using the log soap system if it, there's logs that are lost or anything like that. But from what I could tell, attaching prior to starting the container pretty much guarantees you never lose anything. I'm just wondering if maybe those messages aren't kept in Docker logs internally or something like that. But I just saw hypothetical downsides. I didn't see any.
Yeah, no, I think modeling it after the Docker CLI seems like the right thing to do. So I appreciate doing that research. The only thing I could think of, and this is totally out of line to this specifically, but there's a draft PR in which I'm attempting to do where I am messing with some of the order of operations there to be able to do interception, right, during the lifecycle phases.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking out loud to try to understand whether or not there would be some implications there, but I could most likely handle those after the fact. And so I don't think that should be a blocker at all.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Cool, appreciate it. Thank you for the hard work there.
Yeah, it's fun.
I blame Windows.
That draft, I think, has also been up for a bunch of months, hasn't it?
It has. I mean,
it's so close. So close.
It has been so close for a very long time.
Yeah. But,
if you keep poking at me with, making fun of me, then I'll get it done sooner. I promise. All right, cool. We're 2 minutes over. I think we're good. All right. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Yep.